as a human being, I'm engaged in political struggles, openly, candidly, and absolutely with full passion. And I'm totally committed to what I call cultural transformation, totally and completely. I am opposed to racism, I'm opposed to sexism, I'm opposed to bigotry, and for that, I have vested my life.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another wonderful episode of the Immigrant Nation podcast. Today we are glad to host Abdulahi Ahmed An-Na'im. He is the international recognized scholar of law and human rights. During his tenure as professor of law at Emory University, where he is now emeritus, he served as the founding director of the Center for International and Comparative Law. Dr. An-Naim is from Sudan and has traversed the world. His career has been shaped by his commitments to bridging the gap between Islamic law and human rights, with a focus on constitutionalism and legal reform. His extensive research has made lasting contributions to the understanding of the complexities of Sharia law and its relationship to human rights in global context. He is also and has also traveled across the globe involved in speaking engagements on the same issue. Dr. An-Naim, welcome to the Immigrant Nation. This show targets 50 million immigrants across the globe. So tell us, how did you navigate the challenges of living Sudan and building a successful career in different countries, including the United States? What advice, while you're telling us that, would you give Islam migrants who are trying to find their path in new countries?
Okay, good. Thank you very much. I should start by, in terms of my own personal history, I graduated from University of Khartoum in law in 1970. I did graduate school studies in Britain, went back to teach in Sudan from 76 until 85. I had to leave Sudan for political reasons. I was in prison before I left. The movement I was part of was suppressed. The leader was executed, and I was facing possibility of persecution myself for heresy. So when I talk about Sharia, I'm not talking about an academic discipline. I'm talking about a personal life history. And still, I'm struggling with this. My latest book in Arabic is called, roughly translated as Islam and the Secular State. It is a translation of an English book about how to found the secular state on Islamic foundations, on Islamic discourse. And that is really the point. You asked me to give advice. I don't know if I'm in a position to do that because I don't know the range of people I'm talking to. But I will tell you my own personal position of view. I firmly believe, and I think being an immigrant, of course, being a second generation child of immigrants is something different. But being an immigrant, I believe that I am of two worlds, of two cultures, of two contexts. And that for life, that is my I left Sudan when I was 1939 when I left Sudan. So about half my age, I lived outside Sudan, half inside Sudan. So I am of two worlds. I grew up and was formed by that culture, and not only Islam, but many African traditions and culture and history. And then I continue. For me, therefore, the key was how to remain connected to both, to reconcile both, without giving priority to either the exile environment or my indigenous home that is no longer even almost there by now. We have a war going on for the last year and a half that might totally dismantle what we now know as Sudan. But I remain connected to that in my mind, in my heart, in my worldview, and academic and other work. So I think that therefore the key is not to live with the illusion that, oh, I'm a German or whatever and I can be that. No, you can never be that. I can never be that. I am a citizen of the United States, but I know I am not an American, and I do not wish to be an American or become an American. I want to be a Sudanese who happens to be of American citizenship. That is my approach. That's my worldview. My commitments, my values are shaped by where I come from, and they remain anchored in where I come from. And that, I think, has been the key to my work. I sent you a link to my website where you can see my publications. You can see, in fact, I have almost 30 or 40 articles, book chapters that can be downloaded free of charge. Many lectures that can be also listened to. People can see, if you share my website, can see the work I do. And I will keep doing for the rest of my life, that is. Okay?
So, for those of you who are just joining us, we are speaking with Dr. Abdulahi Ahmed An-Na'im. Dr. Abdullahi, we will obviously post the link to your website and to your content on our website, and of course, when we put the podcast out. But you just said something that I find really interesting. I personally, I am an American citizen from Kenya. I'm an immigrant from Kenya. I am an American citizen by choice because I choose to be an American. I love America for the opportunity it has given me and my family to be able to change what we ran away from. Most immigrants are running from their country of birth for a certain reason. And the majority of us get lost in translation. Let me explain what I mean getting lost in translation. We get lost in translation because we don't know if we want to stay in the country that we were raised, or we want to stay in the country where we are going to spend the majority of our adult life. And because of that, we feel torn between the two, the love of our motherland and the love of our new home. In your situation specifically, you state that you are an American citizen, but you can never be an American. So here's a question for you. I would presume that you would want to relocate back to Sudan. So Sudan being a war-torn country today, what are you and your fellow colleagues, fellow citizens from Sudan living in diaspora are doing so that you can be able to put Sudan together and brilliant minds like yourself can go back to Sudan?
I did not say that. Did I say that I want to go relocate in Sudan back to Sudan?
I am just asking.
No, you did not ask. You stated it as a fact. You said I want to relocate to Sudan and Sudan is at war. I did not say that I want to relocate to Sudan. I am a human being of this planet. This planet, which has been around for 15, 20,000 years now, is not American and Sudanese. It is the planet of human beings.
But the reality of our planet is we are divided by borders.
How old is this? 200 years? 300 years?
No, I agree with you, not too old.
Not too old, not even young.
Yes.
200 years, 300 years, which is the age of the United States. If you take the most exaggerated measure of it, 300 years compared to 15,000 years of human history. Therefore, I'm not defined by being American. I speak for myself. I don't want to speak for you. I'm American.
Yes.
And I tell you, I know about this country enough to know that this country is a country of racism. This country is a country of colonialism. This country is a country of invasion. How many invasions have the United States perpetrated in Latin America, in Central America, in the rest of the world? How many wars have the United States been a primary instigator and perpetrator of since the end of Second World War? So when I say when I don't say I love America, this is too vague, too ambiguous. There is racism in this country, in America. As an African, I face racism now. I have lived in Atlanta for 30 years. I have lived in the United States for 40 years. And I still every day face racism because of my accent, because of the color of my skin, because of my religion. So when I say America, what does that mean? America.
So that's important. That's really important because this is the one place where you and I are now gonna tangle.
Yes.
right? We
Yeah.
agree 100% that racism is very alive in America and most of Europe. But also, if I look from where I come from, specifically, I come from Kenya. There is what would compare racism, and there we call it nepotism or tribalism. If I travel to places where I've been to Dubai, I have the same experience, right? If I go to China or Japan, places where I've been to, I see the same issue. So human differences are always going to be there. And human hate, I don't think is something that we can completely eliminate in modern society. With your religious experience, what tools would you equip, would you give immigrants so that they can utilize those tools so that they can overcome the malady of what would consider racism or hate or tribalism?
Okay. There is a difference between human difference and human bigotry and human prejudice.
Yes.
Okay? So let us be very specific in our language. When you say you cannot eliminate human difference, I agree, and in fact, I celebrate human difference. I am investing. As I said, I maintain my difference. I don't want to merge in anything else. So that is not the issue. The issue is bigotry and prejudice. My work is about what I call cultural transformation and political mobilization. Read the website, listen to my lectures, look to my life. You know, I have a piece in the website called Autobiographical Reflections.
I enjoyed reading that.
When you read that, you see that this is what I live by. What I mean by cultural transformation is that whoever we are, wherever we are, I just happen to be here in this time, at this point. I could be somewhere else at a different time if I still have any life left. I'm at 79 now. So I'm saying this to say that wherever I am, my project is the human project, not the American, not the Sudanese. The human project is about what I call cultural transformation and political mobilization. I am now part of the struggle to block the possibility and the risk of the election of Donald Trump. I am now in the process of promoting the candidacy and hope the successful candidacy of Kamala Harris, the vice president.
Why is this important to you?
Because Donald Trump is racist, is divisive, is bigoted. And if he is elected to be the president of the United States, the entire world will suffer for it. So that's why I'm very straightforward and specific about this. I engage in political struggles. I engage in cultural transformation to transform attitudes. So when I say racism, I don't just sit back and take it inflicted on me, but I struggle against it. But I acknowledge its existence, and I realize.
Let me ask your permission to be a little bit confrontational.
Yes.
What are some of the things the former president has said or done that helped you come to that conclusion that he is a racist man?
The way he speaks about immigrants, immigration, and the way he describes immigrants. Have you listened to the last conversation he had with Kamala Harris?
Yes, I did. I actually did listen to the actual interview on the day of the interview, and then I did something I've always done with all pieces that I'm interested in, which is I love to read people's body language. So I muted my TV and watched the whole show by taking notes by just watching their bodies. But still, that helps me understand how they're speaking to the people and to each other. But I'm just asking for facts here. What basis do you have to consider him racist?
He said immigrants in Ohio are eating dogs and cats. Did he say that?
Yes, he did.
Are immigrants, factually, are immigrants in Ohio eating dogs and cats?
Well, so based on our research
Listen,
so far,
you talk about confrontation.
Yes.
I talked to you, Martin. You said a specific thing he said. I gave you a specific thing he said.
Of course.
Answer this question. Did he say that?
Yes, he did. But is that the only reason why?
No, it is an example. of his bigotry and racism.
But
Why?
that has been debunked. So why would that be a fact to you? Yet it has been debunked by the mayor of the city and the governor of the state.
Because the candidate to the presidency of the United States said that on public television on a debate with his opponent. That's why it is relevant and it is absolutely central. Someone who lies or speaks so lightly with facts, presumably facts or pretending them to be facts, because he can get away with that sort of rubbish in his sort of rallies, he can say anything to his constituency. Nobody will check the facts. When the facts were checked, he was found to be lying on public television in a national debate. That's why I absolutely believe that Donald Trump is an absolute disaster if he is to be elected. That's why my point was it's not just simply about Trump. It's about I, as a human being, I'm engaged in political struggles openly, candidly, and absolutely with full passion. And I'm totally committed to what I call cultural transformation, totally and completely. I am opposed to racism, I'm opposed to sexism, I'm opposed to bigotry, and for that, I have vested my life.
Dr. An-Naim, I'm gonna quote you here. You say, I saw in my human rights work how official authorities of so-called host countries were often hostile to asylum seekers and tended to humiliate them to discourage them and others from applying for asylum. Is there a comparison to what you're referencing to, your experience as an asylum seeker, with the current political hysteria, fear-mongering, and hate being propagated by former President Trump and his VP and those on the right regarding asylum seekers?
By the way, I'm not an asylum. I'm asylum asylee, you might say. I did not apply for political asylum in the United States. I left Sudan because of political persecution. I was in prison before I left, and I was facing charges of heresy. That's why I left Sudan. I came to United States as a visiting professor at the University of Los Angeles for 2 years. And then I was a scholar in residence in Woodrow Wilson Center, scholar in Woodrow Wilson in Washington, D.C. Then I was a visiting professor in Canada for 3 years, in Sweden for a year. Came back to United States when I was a director of Africa Watch, which is the Human Rights Watch, division of Human Rights Watch. Now it is part of the integrated organization. So I secured my green card through my work in the United States. I never applied for asylum anywhere in the world because of the humiliation and the indignities that applicants for asylum are subjected to. I live in Georgia. Within 200 miles from Atlanta is a prison where asylum seekers are kept in detention without charge or trial for up to 8-9 months, waiting for their asylum application to be vetted by the United States. I take that to be humiliating and sort of total violation of human rights as I understand it. Now, the language that Donald Trump speaks and the fear-mongering and the racism that he is constantly cultivating is what, to me, is promoting this and advancing it in the future. So I don't want to make an issue of Donald Trump because I don't think that he's significant enough to make an issue of. He is just simply someone I'm opposed to, and I gave him as an example of my political struggle. That is my issue. My issue is a political struggle for what I believe to be justice and human dignity and rights for all human beings. Without
Definitely. Definitely. So if we may pivot, please, how does your religious value teach you to deal with issues of hate?
My religious value is something that I have struggled with all my life to promote an understanding of it that is different from what seems to be the common assumption about what Islam or religion is about. I am part of a movement. The reason I left Sudan is all in the website, but I can tell you more about it. The reason I left Sudan is that I joined the movement in 1968, when I was a student at the University of Khartoum, more than 50 years ago, in which I was trying to promote an understanding of Islam that is different from current understanding. So let me put it as much brief way as I can. Every religion, whether it's Christianity or Islam or whatever it is not the religion in the abstract. It's in human being interpreting and living by their interpretation of the religion. If you take the conduct of Christians or Jews or Muslims or whoever you choose to illustrate your point with, if you compare that, what Muslims do and what Islam is, the question becomes Islam according to whose understanding of Islam, whose interpretation of Islam. There are 800 billion Muslims around the world. Sorry, million. A third of humanity are Muslims.
Yeah, shy of 1 billion people.
From China to United States, to Canada, to Latin America, all over, in all 5 continents. Okay? And if you then look at, the range of understanding of Islam, and then you can compare sort of Shia Islam versus Sunni Islam, which Sunni Islam, which Shia Islam, then, so when you say, what value my religion about this and that, the question is, what understanding of religion? Whose understanding of religion? My understanding of religion is, that it is about respecting the human dignity of every human person. That is what I was talking, what I was saying, you find on my website, my life is about. Total, absolute human dignity and rights, equal rights for every human being, regardless of race or gender or religious or religion or political orientation or organization.
Dr. An-Naim, you speak about post-colonialism and past-colonialism.
Yes.
In today's society, how is this materializing and why is this relevant for immigrants to be aware of?
Colonialism is alive, in fact, thriving. I mean, if any of us think that colonialism ended in the 1950s or 70s, Kenya and the UK 62, Kenya became independent in 1962 from Britain. Until 1958, Britain was absolute, had nothing to do with the independence for Kenya. Within 5 years, Kenyans are supposed to become full independent, sovereign citizens of a country of which they have never been citizens in their life. 50 years of British colonial rule in Kenya, Kenyans were denied citizenship in their own country. In 1958, Britain decided to grant, quote unquote, Kenya independence. Within 5 years, Kenyans are supposed to become citizens of their country. These are the roots of destabilization and underdevelopment in our societies, colonialism. But colonialism is not over by any means. Israel is colonizing the West Bank. And Gaza is now the genocide war going on in Gaza. That is colonialism. And who is supporting it? The United States. Who is funding it? The United States. Who's arming it is the United States. So the United States foreign policy is as colonial as Israeli domestic policy. And there is no difference between the two. So to talk about, the UN came up with a list of the poorest nations in the world, or the poorest countries in the world. 20 of them are African. All of these countries, Tanzania, Sudan, South Africa, all of these countries are one of the poorest. And then you look and see what is the root of that and what is the current reasons for that. So that's what I mean by neocolonialism. Neocolonialism is a reformation of colonialism in different forms and shape and color. So we are disillusioned or sort of confused by, this is something different. No, it is not. It is the same beast in a different garb, in a different color. It comes now with the media. It comes now with global capitalism. It comes now with exploitation of our resources, with constant. I mean, African countries are paying interest over their debts for decades without ever having anything to do with the capital, the original capital for which they are paying all that interest.
So I have to jump in here because you're saying something that's really sensitive to me, right? And we'll go back to some of the things that you just spoke, but just thinking about the amount of debt that African countries are experiencing and the amount of debt that is across the globe. It is the responsibility of our elected officials in countries that we've migrated from to decide on whether to take on debt or not take on debt, right? But we have continued in Africa, we have continued to take debt that we cannot sustain. And so who is enslaving the people? Is it the debt giver or the debt seeker? Who's the African government, for example?
Now, when you ask that question, look at this country. This country that you love, the United States.
Yes.
And think of capitalists who are exploiting people in this country.
Happens all day.
And people who continue. I live with people. I know people who live cycles and cycles of poverty because they continue all their life struggling to keep just paying the interest over their loans, never hoping to pay the loans. So this is the nature of socio-economic relationships. When you say our elected officials, what do you mean elected officials? When did Kenya, listen, Martin.
Go ahead.
When did Kenya have elected officials? In the history of Kenya, since independence, how much of that history has Kenyan, when you say our elected officials? What elected officials in Kenya? What elected officials in most African countries? Look throughout the continent. Give me how many elected official democracies that you can count. Senegal, who else? South Africa, maybe? Where? So when you say elected officials, as if you make it as if they are fully responsible, independent, freely chosen leaders of their communities, which is not the case. The majority of situations.
Why is it not the case, Professor?
Because of coup d'etats that are supported by Western former colonial powers. How many look at the history of Kenya. And what did the rest of the world do to help the people of Kenya to achieve democratic, sustainable democratic governance and constitutional governance in Kenya? So why would I be surprised that why would you be surprised when I say that neocolonialism is a new form of colonialism?
I understand that I'm not fighting your idea. What I am working toward is making sure that those who are listening to our conversation are getting enriched by our conversation.
Okay.
While you and I may share the same ideas, and I really do share your ideas, in terms of how much Africans have given away their countries to either the Chinese, the Japanese, Americans, and Europeans, while I understand the political manipulation and the economic manipulation that plays in, the majority of the population does not understand this. And this is why I am trying to break this down for them with your help.
Okay.
And this is because we need to understand the reason behind migration, the reason behind me leaving Kenya, the reason behind you leaving Sudan, and what the consequences of that are to our motherland.
Okay. Now, Martin, this country is said to be a country of immigrants.
Yes.
Okay? Every American except Native Americans is an immigrant.
That's a very interesting statement, Professor, but keep going.
No, Americans call it all the time immigrant country of immigrants. I'm part of all this language, and I taught it all my life, and I live with it. So factually, every single citizen of this country is an immigrant or descendant of immigrants, except indigenous Native Americans, who are now dwindling in numbers to almost becoming extinct. So when you say we people, what forces us to immigrate? Everybody is immigrating all the time. Europeans populated North America. Europeans populated Latin America or South America. Europeans populated Australia. Everybody is immigrating all the time. Human history is about immigration. There is no culture, there is no society, there is no civilization that is not a product of immigration. So you want to say, you said you want to help people understand. Okay, so let's talk about that specifically. You talk about immigration as if we Africans somehow are exceptional in that. By the way, the vast majority of Africans are not immigrants at all. In fact, they live on the continent, they travel throughout the continent. If you take Sahelian Africa, where I come from, the part from the Sahel, which is Sudan, by the way, the term refers to the region from Senegal to Ethiopia. That is what Sudan is. What made Sudan, Ethiopia, Eritrea, Sudan, quote unquote, South Sudan, Chad, Mali. What made that is European colonialism. What divided these societies and broke down their economies is European colonialism. Why they broke their economies? Because whereas the normal movement of populations and trade was going throughout the region, from the east to west, north to south, in an organized, ancient manner. France and the United States primarily, but Spain at some point, Portugal early on, came and broke those economies down into, Chad is, why should Chad be French and Sudan be British, or South Sudan be British? Who made that happen? And what impact that has is now we have this idea that there is somehow an imaginary line in our minds that created by colonial construction that says these are the political boundaries of Sudan. These are the political boundaries of Kenya. These are the political boundaries of Uganda. If you just happen by chance, accident of birth, to be born on this side of the line, you are Kenyan. On this side of the line, you are Ugandan. Whereas the same people could be, the same village could be divided by that line. And then then I have to get a visa to go to Kenya. I can't work in Kenya without the permission of the government of Kenya. I can't trade, I can't do anything. So whereas in normal human history throughout, before colonialism and capitalism, which are extremely recent phenomena of that scale, before that, organically people moved and traded and cross-married and integrated culturally with other human beings in a very spontaneous manner. But we now have these artificial creations. We have 193 or 94 members of the United Nations. Why should that be so? And let us trace the origins of these divisions. So I'm saying I would rather work for, remember earlier on I said, I'm a citizen of this planet. By that I mean seriously. I mean it that I would rather invest, as I said, cultural transformation, political mobilization, to struggle for what I believe to be justice, what I believe to be human rights, what I believe to be economic development, protection of the environment, all of the concern that I have. I struggle for that to the best of my ability, open to being influenced by other opinions or to be shaped by other influences, as I have been, I know in my life. That has been the case for me.
Talking about artificial creations, there has been no such thing as an Islamic State, never has been one and can never be. The term Islamic State does not appear anywhere in the Muslim languages or written text until the 20th century. Why is this idea important vis-a-vis controversial?
I don't believe it is an important idea. I think it's a dangerous idea, and I'm totally opposed to it. And in fact,
the contradiction I was looking for.
No, it's not a contradiction. I published a book. I keep talking about these books and these books. I'm sorry, because that's how I communicate. I published a book in 2008. It's entitled Islam and the Secular State. And the argument I made in that book is that there is no such thing as an Islamic State. I said this 20 years ago, almost 15 years ago, I said it earlier in articles and so on, there has never been an Islamic State for a single day. It is conceptually incoherent because the state cannot be religious. It cannot have a religion. The state is a political institution. Therefore, it is conceptually incoherent. It is historically unprecedented, not a single day, ever, anywhere. Never can it be today, anywhere either. I give the example of Iran and Saudi Arabia. To each other, their heresies. So which is the Islamic State? And how do we know? What criteria do we set up to establish the Islamicity of a state? And what happens if that state fails to live up to that criteria? How can we take that title away? So Iran called itself the Islamic Republic of Iran. What is Islamic about it? What about all the Iranians who believe that it has nothing to do with Islam? What about Sunnis who live in Iran as second-class citizens, let alone people of the book or other people? But Sunni Muslims are not equal citizens by the constitution of Iran itself. The constitution of Iran divides citizens in terms of whether they're Sunnis or Shia. When are they Shia according to the Isna Ashari madhab of Khomeini? How about Ismailis? How about Baha'is? And so on. So this notion of something called an Islamic State is nonsense, absolute nonsense, but it's a very dangerous nonsense. Fascism is nonsense, but it is real,
yes,
and it is dangerous. An Islamic State discourse is nonsense, but it is real and it is dangerous.
So I'm glad you went there, because that puts me back to a conversation we were having earlier. You talked about borders that separate us, yet in our history as humans, there is no borders, not until colonial masters really stepped in, I would say. Talking about Israel and the domination of Palestine, knowing the historical land rights between the Palestinians and the Israelis, what would be the land solution between the two so that they can coexist and move forward?
Two-state solution. Two states. In 1948, Israel did not exist before 1948. It was.
I beg to differ, but I'll let you keep going.
No. Now, Israel, the state of Israel, does not exist before 1948.
But the Jewish people belonged in those lands.
Okay, now you are using different language. Why did you shift Jewish people? I said the state of Israel did not exist before 1948.
I concur.
Okay, so we are not talking about ancient rights. We are talking about a land was shared by Christians, Jews, and Muslims for centuries.
Yes.
Jews lived throughout the region. Among Muslims, Christians lived out throughout the region. Among Muslims lived throughout the Mediterranean with other religious communities. That is the history. Now, here suddenly we have a state that is formed by ethnicity and religion, which is the state of Israel.
Which is the basis of colonialism, if I may point that out.
For many situations, but in the case of we're talking about Israel specifically, let us finish that conversation, or that part of the conversation. So Israel defines citizenship in terms of Jewish ethnicity. So if you are born to a Jewish mother in China or in Alaska or in the North Pole, you are automatically entitled by Israeli law to Israeli full citizenship. If you are a Palestinian, born and lived centuries, your ancestors in that land, you are not entitled to Israeli citizenship. Every Jew has the law of return, they call it. Every Jew has a right to return to Israel. Return to a place that he or she has never lived or been for centuries, but they have a right to return. And then the Palestinians who are born in that land of Palestinian ancestry are denied citizenship in their own homeland. So 1948, the Israeli state was established. The UN made a declaration, a decision by the General Assembly, so-called the partition, dividing the land to Israeli and Palestinian. That partition, 1940, that resolution is still valid and binding under international law. I go by that resolution. Let us go back to 1948 and the Security and the General Assembly resolution, the United Nations resolution. And Israel is a member of the treaty of the Charter of the United States, of the United Nations. It is bound under international law by resolutions of the General Assembly of the United Nations. The General Assembly of the United Nations declared that we divide this land between the two peoples, what you call the Jewish people and the Israeli-Palestinian people. They divided this land. That division has been violated since 1967 by Israeli occupation of the West Bank and Gaza Strip. Israel annexed Jerusalem, because Jerusalem was divided by the 67 war. Israelis held half of Jerusalem, the Arabs held the other half. Israel, by unilateral annexation, united the two and declared them the eternal capital of the State of Israel. The UN Charter, of which the UN Israel is a member, decrees that territories cannot be acquired by military conquest. Israel annexed the Golan Heights in Syria. Israel annexed East Jerusalem to make it a single capital. And Israel has been in occupation of the West Bank and building settlements in the West Bank, displacing Palestinian populations in the West Bank, and now destroying Gaza and committing genocide in Gaza. That is what I mean about colonialism and neocolonialism.
Professor, you remain determined that an idea should never be allowed to be killed, and by killing it, or by killing its author. Martin Luther King, his dream lives on and inspires millions across the globe. Bishop Desmond Tutu, the same. Nelson Mandela, the same. These are all teachers and leaders whose ideas live on. What role do mentors play in society today, and how should immigrants across the globe seek mentors? And what role did Ustad Muhammad Taha play in your life?
So Mahmoud is my teacher and mentor throughout my life. As I said, since 1968, when I was a student at the University of Khartoum. And his work, his life has been transformative for me throughout my life. But I do not speak for him or advocate his ideas now. At this point, I'm not advocating. If you read the book I mentioned to you, you will see that I specifically state that this is not about the ideas of Ustaz Muhammad Taha. I speak in my own voice, on my own responsibility. But the question of the power of ideas and the powers of that actually that phrase is my phrase too. I say that I refuse to accept that you can kill an idea by killing its author. That's why I have carried on presenting the ideas of Ustaz Mahmoud in my language, in my understanding of them throughout my life, because I refuse to, because he was killed in 1985 because of his ideas. And I refuse to accept that you can kill the idea by killing its author. That is what Ustaz Mahmoud is to me. But talking about Desmond Tutu and Nelson Mandela and so on, of course, Nelson Mandela was in prison for almost 30 years. What did we know, Africans? What did we know about him or his life or his work throughout that time of apartheid? But we suddenly discover Nelson Mandela. Absolutely, he's a brilliant human being. He's a supremely beautiful human being. But precisely his beauty and his humanity is in his openness to diversity, to the complexity of human societies, not to this is American, this is Kenyan or other African. But then the point for me is that if you look at throughout human history, Jesus Christ was executed, crucified by the Romans with Jewish instigation in almost 2,000, almost 3,000 years ago, or 2,100, 500 years ago. For 300 years, Christianity was almost extinct. Now, Jesus Christ is one of the most powerful and influential human beings in history. So you don't judge the significance of ideas or their authors in terms of how long has it been and what influence did that person have. By that measure, Jesus Christ should totally be irrelevant and forgotten. By the measure of actual fact and the impact that his life and example has set for humanity, he is one of the most influential in human history. So yes, I do believe that I will resist killing an idea by killing its author. But I have a more complex, I think, and longer term view of how history's ideas travel and live. Karl Marx, look at what life did he have, what influence his ideas have. If you think of Darwin, Charles Darwin, if you think of all of these major figures, Einstein, in their own lifetime, they were very limited and influence. But now their ideas, think of the Mahatma Gandhi. Again, I mean, sort of the impact that his life and ideas have had in the world. So those are the points I would make here.
Dr. An-Naim, your work in human rights and constitutional reform has been diverse. So can Muslim immigrants apply in their efforts to advocate more for transparency and accountability in government, whether in their homeland or whether living abroad?
Yes, absolutely, everywhere. In their homeland, where they live now, where they might live in the future. The point, as I said, is universal. Universality of human rights is not just simply a term, it is a reality, that the human is universal. And therefore, wherever I happen to be, I work for these values. Transparency, accountability, participation, integration, equal citizenship, all of these values that I struggle for. I struggle for in this country, I struggle for in Sudan. Now, I am part, by the way, I am part of several groups who are struggling for restoring peace in Sudan, ensuring humanitarian assistance for Sudanese people who are stranded inside or outside Sudan, internally displaced or refugees in neighboring countries. So I promote those ideas and those values actively by writing op-eds, by engaging in interviews, by advocating, by donating funds to the extent that I can. Everywhere I can be useful to people. So that is, Ustaz Mahmoud's value to me is that he lived his ideas. He embodied them in the flesh. I accompanied him 17 years until he was executed in 1985. I was in prison with him just before he was executed. So I speak of a man I know personally who lived the values. There is nothing he said that he did not live by. He speaks about the total unity between our thoughts, our words, and our action. That our value as human beings is that we think freely. We speak as we think. We act as we speak. If there is a dichotomy between what we say and what we think, or what we think and what we do, then that is a discredit to our humanity and human dignity. That is what Ustaz Muhammad Taha means to me. But he is a man who lived and has been executed unfairly, and I was there at the trial, which lasted 1 hour, for which he was convicted for political crimes, undermining the constitution, sort of conspiracy to overthrow the dictatorship of Numeria at the time. Those are the charges. The trial was 1 hour. He was sentenced to death over by a single sheet of paper, a statement that he made calling for the abolition of the Sharia laws in Sudan and calling for ending the civil war in South Sudan. Those are the two demands in that document. I translated his
talking about Sharia law.
To give people a chance to reference. I translated his book, The Second Message of Islam, into English. It's available now across the world, and many of it online too. Many people have put it online too. In the introduction, I quote the statement that he made those demands and on which he was tried, and I describe the trial. So I'm saying that to say that people can. The book is called The Second Message of Islam. My introduction explains all of this. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
So you've written extensively on reconciliation.
Yes.
Do you think there's an opportunity for those who believe in Islam and the Muslim faith when it comes to reconciliation, Islamic principle with human rights? And how do you see Islam law contributing to modern governance while upholding universal human rights, especially in the Western world?
Not in the Western world, anywhere.
Okay.
In Sudan, it does not work. In Saudi Arabia, it does not work. In Iran, it does not work. In Pakistan, it does not work. Anywhere, not in the Western world only.
So why does it not work in those countries you just mentioned?
Because there is no such thing as Islamic law. This is a human construct.
Yes.
It is an interpretation that some Muslims put on Islam, but it is not. The term Islamic law is a contradiction in terms, because when you speak about law, you are talking about positive law enacted by a state and enforced by a state. Islam is not a state, and it does not have the ability to act or to speak. You know, the founder or the man to whom the Shia side of Islam is attributed, his name is Ali ibn Abi Talib, who was the Prophet's cousin and son-in-law. He married Fatima, and they had two children, Hassan and Hussein. So that is the history of Shiism in Islamic history. He said the Quran does not speak. It is men who speak for the Quran. He said this in the year 660, and still it is true and has always been true. So the Quran does not speak. Islam does not speak. It is only human beings who speak. It's only human beings who act. It's only human beings who believe and can believe in religion or become heretic. It is only human beings who can do all of that. Not Islam, not Sharia, or so-called Islamic law. The term Islamic law is a Western term, combining a Western idea of law with a Western idea of Islam. But throughout Muslim history, you don't find a so-called Islamic State that enforced so-called Islamic law. It does not exist factually. So therefore, I absolutely have no conflict or tension between subscribing to Islam as a religion, practicing it as I understand it and believe, and for which I am accountable before God and stand responsible for it among human beings. Yes, and I don't see any contradiction in that. I invite people to please read the publications, listen to the lectures that I give on the website, to see that I believe in reconciliation between all tensions. Reconciliation is an absolute essential survival of ideas of human beings physically. Without reconciliation and conciliation, we don't stand a chance. We have to reconcile ourselves with nature. We have to reconcile ourselves with other human beings in our communities across the world, or otherwise we are all going to face extinction as a human race.
Dr. An-Naim, let me jump back to a conversation we left hanging. If Israel tomorrow decided that they will abide by the Accord for 1948, do you think that there is a possibility that other nations in that sphere of the world would let them coexist?
Why should other nations be relevant?
Because they're neighbors.
So,
with the fact that I don't think
are you
no border lines are going to go
Are
away.
you telling me that Canada has anything to do with what the United States can do or
No.
Mexico. So why should other nations, because they are neighbors, decide what should happen in Palestine and between Palestine and Israel? Because they are neighbors. Now, Russia and Ukraine are neighbors. Has been going on almost 2 years of war, which the United States and other Western allies are funding and arming because they were trying to co-opt and bring the Ukraine to membership of NATO, thereby forcing Russia to live next door to a member of its arch enemy, which is the NATO alliance of Western powers. So does the fact that Russia and the Ukraine are neighbors mean that they have anything to do with the Russians have a say or decide what goes on in the Ukraine or vice versa? So why do you assume that or think even that most of the neighbors of Israel are actually, in fact, have normalized relations with Israel, have diplomatic relations with Israel. That is just simply regional politics that goes on. Egypt, talk about Egypt, Israel and Egypt are at peace officially and since 1973, since the Camp David. So the point, therefore, is that before 1973 even. But the point is that with all of them, Jordan, Morocco, what countries are you talking about here? Why should they? The implication is that somehow Arabs do not accept Israel. But Israel does not accept.
Are you saying that is not a fact?
No.
Are you saying that is not a fact?
That is not a fact. Absolutely. Okay. You have no proof. You give me evidence, proof that quote unquote Arabs.
Well, so if you want proof, I'm just going to do the same thing you did with me earlier. So let's look at the Iranian regime, right? What are some of the vows they've had against the state of Israel?
Iranians are not Arabs. Iranians are Persians.
Okay.
Okay, factually, Iranians are Persians. So you can't jump. I'm coming to your point in a minute. You can't just simply jump through human histories, human anthropology and everything to talk about Arabs, and then you jump to talk about Iran. Iran, in terms of ethnicity, Iranians are Persian. In terms of religion, of politics or religion, they are Shia Sunnis. The totally different history before Khomeini than what it had since Khomeini. The Shah of Iran, who ruled Iran before Khomeini, in fact, had no problem whatsoever with the state of Israel and Jews anywhere. And Khomeini, for his political agenda, who agitated and created this chasm between so-called throwing Israel into the sea or threatening that they will destroy the state of Israel. And it is all interstate rivalry between the United States and Iran, and we have to remember the history. I mean, how can you forget the history? Come on, Iran was... What do you know about the history of Iran before Khomeini? I mean, think about the rivalry between Russia and Britain, and then between the Soviet Union and the United States over Iran, of Iranian oil. So these histories are complex, and the factors that influence shaping nations and countries and or governments and their policies. But the point is that if you give me evidence that the people of the country now we call Iran, which did not have that name, by the way, most of its history, but the country now we call Iran, give me evidence that the people of that place hate Israel or want to destroy the state of Israel. Give me evidence of that the people of that place have control over their own government, have protection of their own fundamental rights as citizens of that place. Then we can talk about this.
So what I am understanding, what you're saying is the citizenry of the country of Iran, being of Persian origin, which I completely concur and agree with you, is under arrest by a regime that is not focused on what's good for the population, but on what's not good for its own population.
Yes,
Fantastic. I am glad we went there because that allows us to pivot onto something else.
yes.
So, based on your belief, do immigrants, or what can immigrants play in bridging cultural and political divides in their new countries, particularly in relation to fostering understanding between their religious values and Western or political systems across the globe?
Okay. I would give you very maybe helpful to go for a very concrete example of this. In this country, in the United States, of which I am a citizen, there is a very strong hostility and negativity towards things Islamic. There is this notion of the rivalry between, so to some Americans it's Christianity and Islam, to others it is Iran, or of course when they say Muslims, they pick and choose and which Muslims are they talking about, and they choose those who happen to be their antagonists or protagonists at the time, and to them that becomes Islam. So as an American citizen, I am trying, and I'll keep trying to dismantle and debunk that nonsense. Muslims are not hostiles to Christians. Muslims of any part of the region, I mean, there are 10 million Muslims in China. India is the second largest Muslim country in the world. There are more Muslims in the Republic of India than in the entire Middle East and North Africa. We don't think of India as Islamic or as Muslim, but we think of the Middle East as Islamic or Muslim, Iran as Islamic or Muslim, Afghanistan. Who created Afghanistan? What happened? What is the history of Afghanistan? It is the United States, and before that the Soviet Union, and before that Britain. That is the history of so-called Afghanistan, the country now we call Afghanistan. The Taliban is an immediate outcome of the policies of the United States in Afghanistan and
Yes.
the Soviet Union in Afghanistan.
Yes.
The Qaeda, the so-called Al-Qaeda, is a product of that policy and history. So the point, therefore, is we have to understand the complexity of power relations and international relations and economies and the driving power and force of capitalism, as opposed to what people on the ground do and feel. And I think when you look people to people, we see every possibility of human collaboration and cooperation and compassion and solidarity. But if you talk about states and states, think of the European Union and think of the Second World War. Germany, which was destroying the entire continent of Europe, is now the primary force driving the European Union and its economies and its humane relations and humane policies. So states come and go and change, but it is people who make the difference. And let us talk about Germany as an example of a society and a country and a population who transformed themselves from fascism to one of the superior examples of humanity and human dignity and respect within the European Union and beyond. Among all Western powers, so-called Western powers, Germany is now, in my reading, is the top of that compared to the United States or any other country in the so-called Western Union. Yet Germany, 40, 50 years ago, was emerging out of Nazism. That is transformation. That is political mobilization. The German people transformed their culture. The German people mobilized politically. And I know that some of the immigrants listening to this who live in Germany can think of problems with that. But compared to all the rest, what they have there is better, and they better stand up and protect it and defend it.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Ladies and gentlemen, we have been speaking with Dr. Abdulahi Ahmed An-Na'im. He is an international recognized scholar of law and human rights. During his tenure as professor of law at Emory University, where he is now emeritus, he served as the founding director of the Center for International and Comparative Law. Dr. An-Naim's career has been shaped by his commitment to bridging the gap between Islamic law and human rights, with a focus on constitutional and legal reform. His extensive research has made lasting contributions to the understanding and complexity of Sharia law and its relationship with human rights in global context. He also has traveled the world speaking and has given us an opportunity to sit down with him today and have a very, very, very profound conversation. Dr. Ahmed, we want to thank you for coming to the Immigrant Nation podcast. I have to say this. This has been the most thought-provoking conversation I've had in a while, and I am so looking forward to have you come back. That way we can have another conversation, maybe even get into a debate where we can share ideas that can transform humanity. Are you open to the idea?
Thank you very much. Absolutely, absolutely. And please put the website link so people can read and see what I am talking about here.
Definitely, we will do that. We will put a link for your website so that people can visit and get familiar with your work. Again, thank you so very, very, very much. I had a wonderful time. Thank you for the information you've shared with us. Let us get together and have another conversation soon.
Thank you, Martin. Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Have a good one. Thank you. Bye-bye.